kind of puts me in mind of Nestle chocolate and Coca-Cola. But to live deliciously means that she is all about the finest things that are in the earth, the things that only the super rich can afford. So much torment and sorrow give her, for she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. And then verse 9, the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and live deliciously with her shall bewail her. Now, stop right here. We see in America, we see it right now. America was designed to be a nation that was of the will of the people. Those days are gone. They're over with. The people don't choose anything. We have things chosen for us. By who? By the big businesses in America. They're the one. There is always a connection between the kings of the earth and the merchants. They're the ones who wield the most power in any government, whether it's United States, China, or wherever. It's the businesses, the love of money. So anyway, the kings live deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come, and the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her. For no man buyeth their merchandise any more. And then it explains in verse 12 what her merchandise is. This is an interesting list. Gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and of fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thyine wood and all manner of vessels of ivory and all manner of vessels of most precious wood and of brass and of iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men. By the way, there's 18 things here. 6 plus 6 plus 6. The souls of men. Remember what the Bible warns us about the false prophets of the last days? That they through covetousness and feigned words shall make merchandise of you. Look at what's going on in Christianity. It's all about book sales and video sales and offerings and money coming in to the church organization so that we can do the work of God with all your money. God says it's free. And it's supposed to be free. The merchandise of the souls of men. I'm telling you, the most precious commodity in this world is the selling of the human soul. So those who show up at the Bilderberg meeting, they're not just interested in another plane ticket or another chocolate bar or another can of Coke or another microcomputer processor being traded back and forth. That's not their biggest interest. Their biggest interest is in the sale of men's souls. And men are going to sell their souls cheaply when they could just give their soul to the Lord for free. See how messed up this is? This is the agenda of the Bilderbergs. Matthew chapter 16. Someone actually called me this week and quoted this verse to me, and God was telling me, Mike, I had them call for this reason. Write this verse down, because it has everything to do with this agenda at the Bilderberg meeting. Matthew chapter 16 verse 26. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall render every man according to his works. And let me encourage you. You see all the riches of the world. You see all the money being traded back and forth. You see all the business opportunities. All the ways that we can increase our goods and have more stuff in our bigger house that we're building. As Christians, why don't we just turn away from that? We have food. We have raiment. God feeds us. God puts a roof over our head. Doesn't matter if it's a 14-bedroom, 16-bathroom mansion. It doesn't matter. God provides for our basic daily needs. God even gives us some of those things on top of it, like a chocolate bar on the side and a can of Coca-Cola. God gives us those things because He loves us. It's when our hearts are turned away from God and we go after the love of things, that's when we are empowering the merchants who are at Bilderberg meeting secretly, deciding how best they can sell the souls of men. The bankers, the merchants. Then we have the heads of state, the prime ministers, the queens, the kings, the secretaries of state. Hillary Clinton is not there, but one of her deputies is at the Bilderberg meeting. These are the kings of the earth, the heads of state, the ones who at some point are deciding how they're going to give the sovereignty, the souls. The soul of a nation is its sovereignty. The soul of a people is it's their right to decide who's going to lead them, the right to decide who's going to rule over them, what laws they're going to have. It is their right to decide that. And it's all the heads of state. They're now going to the Bilderberg meeting to decide how can we get the people to sell their rights. Think of 9/11. It just happened, quote unquote, to America on a such and such day, and all of a sudden now we have this Patriot Act. We have the Americans who are selling the soul of their nation, their own sovereignty, their own freedoms, their own rights, their own privacy, their own souls. They're selling them away cheaply to the heads of state, to the governments, who now says, we will decide who's going to rule over you. And look at where we are 10 years later. We are being ruled over not by the Constitution of the United States. We're being ruled over by foreign government. China tells us what to do now. Europe tells us what to do. Those who attend the Bilderberg meeting tell us what to do, but we don't tell ourselves what to do anymore. We have sold our souls in this country. The heads of state show up, the kings of the earth. And this was around, and when I brought it up to some men in our church about what I was going to be dealing with, instantly they said, Mike, Psalm 2. Chapter 2 reveals a conspiracy. The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. The kings, the rulers, they've met together in secret, and they sat around and they said, let's figure out how we can destroy the power and the influence of Bible Christianity. Like you say, they didn't invite any preachers. They didn't invite me. They didn't say, Pastor Mike, will you come counsel us on how best we can rule the world for Jesus Christ? That's not what they're doing. And the Bible clearly points out if you're not for Him, you're against Him. And so these kings and these rulers set about, number one, to increase their own power base. Number two, we know, according to the Scriptures, that they're meeting together to decide how best to sell the souls of their nations over to the King that is coming one of these days. In Psalm chapter 2, verse 6, the Bible goes on to say, yet have I set my King upon my holy hill of Zion. And I will declare the decree the Lord has said unto me, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. The Antichrist looks at the inheritance that Jesus is going to get, and he's jealous. And he says, I want it for myself. That's why the kings are over there. That's why the president will show up every now and then. That's why the Secretary of States and the prime ministers and the exchequers and all of those around the world, around Europe and America, they're showing up at the Bilderberg meeting deciding how can we give the sovereignty of our nation over to a cruel Lord. That's what they're doing. The bankers, the merchants, the kings were showing up there. I kept reading names of organizations. I didn't really know what they were, but I realized they were called what we call think tanks. Okay, these are people. The Kissinger group. You know Henry Kissinger, who's already said, hey, we need a new world order out there. Guess what he's doing? He was at the Bilderberg meeting with his foundation, with his group. Remember the Gorbachev Foundation. Once Gorby left the Soviet Union, he came, guess where? He came to San Francisco, set up a group called the Gorbachev Group that basically says, we're going to try to figure out how to get all the nations to work together to turn our sovereignty over so we can have a global community. That's what they're doing. These think tanks, advisors, the European Commission, Digital Agenda Summit, the World Trade Organization, and there were countless others that I had never heard of before. People who have an agenda to turn the sovereignty of the nations and the banking of the nations and the merchandise of the nations and the commerce of the nations and the souls of the nations over to a cruel lord, to a king of fierce countenance. The advisors, they're called in the Bible, they're called the counselors. The chief counselor of this group, I'm going to show you who that is in just a little bit. Psalm chapter 2, we're going to go back to this verse because look at what it says. The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed. Now stop right here. For those of you who are not part of the lunatic fringe, who say that there's no way that there's any conspiracy theories, let me help you with that. And there's a lot of junk out on the internet, and I understand that. And there's countless videos. Somebody sent me a catalog of this sick of just videos on conspiracy theories, and some of them were, man, they were wacky looking. Of course, some people might say that about mine, but one of the things that I want to do is I want to point you to the Scriptures and say, God was there at the meeting. God knew and heard what was going on. God heard all the words. He knew the counsels of the heart of man. And He knew what was in man. Remember Jesus saying that? He knew what was in man. And a conspiracy basically is a few people getting together and they're talking quietly and privately and secretly saying, we're going to work together, we're going to do that. That's a conspiracy. Okay? So here we have a conspiracy. The kings of the earth and the rulers sat down. They took counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. There's not room. No man can serve two masters. There's not room on planet Earth for two kings. The Lord and the Antichrist. There's not room for that. There's not room for the Lord and His people and the Antichrist and his people. There's not room for that. They don't like each other and they're not going to get along, and there's going to be a war. And so the purpose of the advisory committees, the councils, some of them are military in their nature and their scope, military advisors, working together to decide who's going to run the planet here. Is it going to be our Lord and our people, or the Lord Jesus and His people? They've decided that it's not going to be the Lord. They've decided that it's going to be their cruel Lord. Psalm 83 verse 3, they have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. And they have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. And every year we see a little bit more of the world turned against Bible Christianity. We see it in the religious, we see it in the religions of the world. We see it in the political schemes of the world. We see it in the business schemes of the world. We even see it in the churches turning against Bible Christianity. I read an article the other day that there are churches now that are doing Quran readings, reading from the Quran. Why? They have taken crafty counsel together against the Lord, against His hidden ones, to cut off the name of Israel forever. That's their agenda. Isaiah 7 verse 5, because Syria, Ephraim, and the son of Remaliah, 3. Remember that number 3? The trident of Perseus, the triple helix, son of the man of sin, lust of the flesh, lust of the eyes, pride of life. You have 3 here. Syria, Ephraim, and Remaliah have taken evil counsel against these, saying, let us go up against Judah and vex it, and let